AOC's getting it from all sides. And what does it say about the progressive movement in America? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, guys, I don't really know where to begin on this article. AOC has recently been dubbed one of the least effective members of Congress. Her jihads with Nancy Pelosi are legendary. And she's getting slammed all over the place, including the great Isabel Jimenez, who's, basically a founding member of our community, facebook.com/America Middle. There have been there's been a lot of anger at AOC in the progressive far left community, whatever you want to say. Now, you guys know that I am not a progressive, nor am I a far left person. It was funny last year, if I said anything bad about Trump or true about Trump, the comment section said I was a leftist, and whenever I said anything bad about Biden, the whole comment section said that I was a crazy right winger. So figure it out. Here's a clip from Jimmy Dore talking about AOC, and we'll give our analysis. Here we go.
Hey, vulnerable Dems fret after getting a shock. AOC's campaign cash. What? As the midterm campaign's first fundraising deadline approached this week, several vulnerable House Democrats got an unwelcome surprise in their accounts. $5,000 from Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. What? Why would that be unwelcome? I don't get... By the way, that's more than people got for the stimulus. Just so you know. While some are grateful for the infusion of cash, at least 3 Democrats have so far either declined the initial transfer or said they would return the money because they're corporate Democrats and they have integrity.
Okay, so AOC is giving money to some corporate Democrats, apparently.
So do you know what's going on? You give money to AOC, and then she takes that money you gave her, and then she gives it to right-wing corporate Democrats. People who oppose the minimum wage, people who oppose Medicare for all, people who oppose student debt relief. She gives them money so they can get reelected. The Ocasio Cortez donation, these Democrats said, was unsolicited and came without warning. So the right-wing Democrats, the corporate Democrats that she's giving campaign cash to, don't want to be associated with her because she is perceived as being far left.
See, this is the thing that gets me about Jimmy and his criticisms of AOC. It's got to be... I feel like it's lacking some nuance here. These people are... Now, Jimmy's going to go on to say that she's not really far left. She's just another corporate Democrat. She's a sellout, blah, blah, blah. Well, her peers don't look at her that way. You just said, Jimmy, that they didn't want to take the money from her because they didn't want to be associated with her because they have the perception that she's a far leftist. And these are people that have had back office conversations with her, Jimmy, and know where she's at. You relate to her from a distance. Now, again, I think the way that the progressive movement turned on Jimmy Dore and some of the things that were said on some of these other stations about him were uncharitable and terrible. But simultaneously, and I'm obviously more suited to be on Jimmy's side than pretty much any debate between him and TYT and the other one, the Progressive Report. I forgot the name of the other. There's another guy, really, I can't stand him at all. So I'm more inclined to agree with Jimmy, but I'm not certain that these kinds of criticisms of AOC are helpful. Jimmy, she is still known by her compatriots in the Democratic side of the aisle as a far leftist radical. So much so that they don't want to take any money from her. That's got to count for something. But to Jimmy, it appears not so much.
And they don't want to be associated with her, even though she's Ocasio.
Right. They don't want to finish the sentence, Jimmy. They don't want to be associated with her, even though she's what? A sellout? Sure, you think she's a sellout, but they don't think that she's fundamentally changed. And I think that that's an important fact that has got to be recognized if you're going to criticize her.
Cortez is a prolific fundraiser with a campaign machine of her own that could be a major asset to Democrats as they attempt to hold on to their majority next fall. In other words, she has large grassroots support that give her money, and this is what she's doing with it. 81% of these Democrats that AOC just donated to oppose Medicare for all. That's $130,000 from small donors who overwhelmingly support Medicare for all, transferred to Democrats who will do everything they can to oppose the program. That's what AOC is doing with your donations to her, just so you know. And when other YouTube hosts claim to criticize her or the Justice Democrats, but they don't tell you to stop donating to them, they're just giving lip service. They're not serious about
you lost me there. I don't think things are that simple. And I think there's a glaring issue here that Jimmy and the rest of the progressives who are criticizing and piling on to AOC are missing. And it's a very strange situation. You know, I watch, I'm a big sports guy. And so Julian Edelman just retired. And, obviously Julian Edelman was part of this amazing Patriots dynasty with Tom Brady. And he won 3 Super Bowls and he made amazing catches and he performs like mad in the Super Bowl. And so now everybody's like, he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. But he doesn't have the resume that a normal Hall of Famer has. It just so happens that he won a lot of Super Bowls. So one of my favorite commentators gets on TV and says, now you guys are going to make me trash a guy who I have hella respect for because this guy doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And this is how I feel about this video. Now I'm going to have to defend AOC, a person that I'm not very fond of per se. Because I think that people are missing a glaring issue here in their criticisms of her. I mean, she's had a bad go of it. I mean, you had this article right here, which in my mind was only written to embarrass her and degrade her even more in the eyes of people who would support her. Study declares AOC one of the least effective members of Congress. And then, of course, there's the bombshell. I don't know if it's a bombshell. Does it count as a bombshell? But there's a recent Politico article where Nancy Pelosi is basically spiking the football, mocking these people. And the title of the Politico article is again, designed, I think, to humiliate AOC. Inside Nancy Pelosi's war with AOC in the squad, how the House Speaker put Representative Alexandria Ocasio Cortez in her place. So there you go. Pelosi put AOC in her place. That's on Politico. And now everybody's piling on this woman. And it looks like she has less and less political allies anymore. Guys, let me paint this picture for you. When did AOC all of a sudden become this horrible sellout? And why, if she is a sellout, is she a sellout? What happened to her? This is my problem with this whole situation with everybody dragging AOC, is that there doesn't seem to be any recognition that she's in an impossible situation and who put her in that impossible situation. Who is running the Democratic Party? Now, some of you are going to say Nancy Pelosi. That's kind of true. But Nancy Pelosi is not the one that called Pete Buttigieg and all these other people to quit and drop out of the races, even though they had momentum. Buttigieg had hella momentum. Remember, he won Iowa, and all it took was one phone call from one individual, and everybody dropped out and left Biden in. Barack Hussein Obama made one phone call and sat all those people down. You don't think Mr. Obama has made some overtures to AOC and told her, look, I understand that you're idealistic. I was young and idealistic too. But if you want to get stuff done, this radicalism is not the way to go. Here's the other major factor that happens. You know, there's that old story, David and Goliath. And Goliath is this 9-foot giant. And then there's little David with his little slingshot. Viva Palestine, by the way. And what happens is Goliath says, if I win, then all your people are going to be slaves of my people. And if you win, all my people are going to be slaves of your people. Right? That was the deal. So then when David kills Goliath, prior to David killing Goliath, all the good guys were scared to death of him and didn't want to fight. And all the bad guys were sitting there all like, yeah, come on, bring it. So when David, the good guy, kills Goliath, all of a sudden, all the good guys started getting emboldened, and they rush and they attack and they win the battle. Because the leader had gone out and won, slayed the giant, so it gave everybody behind him courage. And you know what the bad guys did when Goliath died? They ran. Why? Because they saw their leader die. And nobody's factoring in the fact that AOC, a young woman in her 20s when she showed up on the scene 4 or 5 years ago, was a young woman inspired by one Bernard Sanders. And Bernie Sanders was the David of the good guy team of progressives. But what did he do? When the leader continues and perseveres and fights on and gives courage to the people behind him. But when the leader submits and bends the knee, it discourages the people that he's following. That's literally what discourage means. Think about what the term discourage means. It means to take away a person's courage. So when AOC first got in, she was extremely idealistic, and she took part in the little office march against Pelosi and all the rest of it. And Pelosi is looking at her like, hey, this is not pragmatic, this isn't practical. And Pelosi never took AOC seriously. Pelosi took AOC as a giant joke. And I understand why Pelosi took AOC as a giant joke. But to me, Jimmy Dore and the rest of them are not asking the right questions. When did we see this change in AOC? I'll tell you when you saw the change in AOC. We saw the change in AOC in 2020. During the 2020 elections, that's when she started to change. You can see here, this Politico article, AOC breaks with Bernie on how to lead the left. The Congresswoman is declining to back primary challengers, following in her footsteps and working with the system in Congress. And this article goes to show how AOC started people on her staff who used to be absolute radicals. They left or were let go, and then she started bringing in more, regular corporate political connected folks and all the rest of it. And she's getting criticized for it. Instead of us saying, well, wait a second, she was some kid in her 20s when she joined the movement. Bernie Sanders was the leader of the progressive movement. And what did Bernie Sanders do in 2016? He allowed the Democrats to steal the election from him. He didn't cause any fuss. And then he went out and campaigned for Hillary more than Hillary campaigned for herself. You remember Hillary when it was clear that she lost to Barack Hussein Obama, where she said, well, he could get assassinated. He campaigned for Hillary more than Hillary campaigned for herself. You know those Rust Belt states where she abandoned Bernie made a point to go out there and represent Hillary. And how did he get repaid for it? He got blamed for Hillary's loss to Trump. And then for the next 4 years, we were inundated with the nonsense about Trump and the Russia and the blah, 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 blah. And Bernie Sanders, instead of saying, these people are trying to distract you from the fact that they stole the election from me. They did. They did steal the election from him. That's a fact. We all know it. And Bernie, did he stand up for himself? Nope. He just sat there and went in line like a good soldier in 2016. Then 2020 comes about. And I'm not going to say the same thing happened, but the fact of the matter is they were saying from the beginning that if Bernie won the popular vote, but the superdelegates selected somebody else, that they were going to go with that because those were the rules. At that point, Bernie should have said, hell no. I'm going to blow up your party. You remember what happened with Trump in 2016? There was a Never Trump campaign. The man was this close to winning the Republican nomination, and Republicans, the Republican established, coalesced together and said, we're going to have a Never Trump campaign. We're not going to let this guy win. And Trump said, I am not going to instruct my folks to vote for your folks if you G me out of this election. So Barack Obama comes out in public and says, I'm not going to let Bernie win. And then they pull the nonsense they pulled in Iowa. Bernie does nothing. They say from the stage that the superdelegates are going to take the vote away from the popular vote. Bernie says nothing. Pocahontas goes out there and lies on Bernie, says that Bernie said a woman could never become president. Nobody believes that. And instead of saying, no, that's a damn lie, she's lying, he goes, rawr. He just allowed these people to walk all over him. And then Obama calls and gets Beto and Pete Buttigieg and the rest of them to all quit. And Bernie says nothing about it. And then they prop Biden up there. And, you know, if it wasn't for COVID, Trump would have destroyed Biden in a landslide. And what does Bernie do? He starts being a good soldier again, and he allows himself to get degraded in front of everybody. Oh, we're going to be on this commission for blah, 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 blah. Bernie was the leader of the progressive movement. He completely bent the knee. Now, look, the other members of the squad, Ilhan, Rashida Tlaib, and the other one, I don't even know what the other one's name. I forgot the other one's name. The black lady with the hair. Look, guys. Those three, okay? You know, in basketball, they have what you call a superstar, and then you have a role player, right? So you got Michael Jordan, right? He's a superstar. Then you got John Paxson, who hit a very important shot. Now, unless you're a Bulls fan or a basketball fan, you have no idea who John Paxson is, but you know who Michael Jordan is. And honestly, that's the squad, okay? That's just a fact. AOC is the Michael Jordan or the Tom Brady of that little team. The problem is Tom Brady won 6 titles because he had a very strong-willed coach, Bill Belichick. And the coach used his power to put his team in the best position to win. And there were times when the entire world was against Belichick. I'll never forget the 2007 season. There was a BS accusation of cheating. And so that year, Belichick got everybody in the team room and said, we're going to destroy everybody. Usually in football, if you're up by 3 touchdowns with 5 minutes left, you just spike the ball out and you're not. These guys went out of their way to just push it in everybody's face and said, F all of you. We're not cheaters. We're the best team on the world, and we're going to show you. We're going to run up the score and embarrass everybody. So you had Bill Belichick, who said, hell no, we're not backing down. We're going for the jugular. Then a guy like Tom Brady, give him a couple role players, and they're going to make history. If Tom Brady didn't have Belichick as the leader to say, no, screw everybody, we're going to do it this way, he wouldn't have the success that he had. It's the same thing with AOC. Jimmy Dore, any of you, I've never been a member of Congress. I've never gone up against that apparatus. Have you? Look, man, Nancy Pelosi, in the Politico article, Nancy Pelosi's out there nakedly mocking AOC, making fun of her, I mean, it's just an out and out disaster, and it's because Pelosi knows that she's won. The minute that Bernie Sanders bent the knee to the Democratic Party for 2 election cycles in a row, he left AOC stranded. What is she supposed to do? Of course, she's the least effective member of Congress because everything that she suggested is an actual progressive policy change that corporate Democrats are not going to love. And the strength of the progressive movement was always its left-wing populism. It was the people. But Bernie Sanders didn't have the stones and the manhood enough to do what needed to be done. And he leaves this girl out by herself. And now we're criticizing her. Look at what she's dealing with. A new book by USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page illustrates how tense things got between Pelosi and the so-called squad during the summer of 2019. In a chapter entitled Inside Nancy Pelosi's War with the Squad, Pelosi pressed on how she feels about the quartet of newly elected progressive. Some people come here, as former House Appropriations Chair Dave Obey would have said, to pose for holy pictures, Pelosi said to an excerpt of the book. Then she elevated her voice like she was mimicking a child and adding, "See how perfect I am and how pure? Okay, there's a group that's going to go pose for holy picture. Now let's legislate over here." That is the leader of the freaking Democratic Party saying that about you in public, mocking you. And the strength of the Progressive Party was, you guys have the legislators in Congress, but we've got America behind us. But Bernie Sanders refused to leverage that power. Instead of saying like Trump, if you guys try to play me, I'm going to blow up the whole party. We will have the Trump dynasty in here for the next 4 election cycles. This is what he should have done, because as Mr. Biden has clearly demonstrated to all of us, there's no material difference between him and Trump, whether it's the border, the economy, or police brutality against unarmed black people. Watch the video from yesterday. That's what Bernie should have done. But instead of that, he bent the knee to the corporate Democrats. He completely sold his soul, and he left this girl out by herself. So if the leader, Bernie took all the courage out of her, and this is one of the reasons why she distanced herself from Bernie. Here's what I think happened, okay? There's some crisis moment when AOC realized that Bernie was not going to fight. I really think that a lot of these young progressives, they looked at Bernie in 2016 and they were like, this is a guy who is at the cusp of victory. He made a mistake. Next time around, he won't make the same mistake. He just needs people behind him. So the squad, Pac-Man, TYT, everybody got behind him. And look, I disdain TYT. I don't like that organization. But they're a powerful voice. Everybody got behind Bernie, but he didn't have the stones to kill Goliath. He didn't have it in him. So he bent the knee again. Now look, bending the knee to Hillary Clinton is bending the knee to a very capable sociopathic individual. But Hillary Clinton is the most intelligent and mentally acute politician I've seen in my life, and that includes over Barack Hussein Obama. The difference between her and Obama is that Obama understands the value of being in the shadows, and Hillary can't do it. Obama's running the country. I hope you realize that. Obama sat back and said, I'm not going to let Bernie win. This dude had the audacity to say, I'm not going to let it happen. That's how much power he thought he has, and he has got good reason for thinking that. And so instead of Bernie going up against really Obama and the establishment, and the minute Obama said, I'm not going to let Bernie win, Bernie should have shot a YouTube video and said, who the hell is he? You guys decide whether or not I'm going to win, not him. But he didn't do that. Then they got up on stage and they said, hey, if somebody wins the majority vote, the popular vote, but the super delegates have their way, are you going to go with that? He said, well, I think the people... He should have stopped right there and said, I hope everybody watching understands the question that these guys just asked me. They're saying, if you guys want me, but a couple of them decide that they don't want me, they're going to be able to overrule your vote. That is worse than the Republicans, because the Republicans didn't even do that with Trump. The Republicans didn't want Trump. The Republicans initiated an Never Trump campaign, and they still allowed Trump to be the Republican nominee because that was the will of the Republican people. But the Democrats aren't even going to give you that. I hope you understand what this question, that's what you should have done, Bernie, but he refused to do it. And I think there's a crisis moment that AOC had where she looked him in the eyes in some back office meeting, and she realized that the guy that everybody was hitching their wagons to was a complete and total sellout, and he was not going to do what needed to be done in order to get to where he needs to get to. And that's when voices like Obama, who's saying you have got to compromise your ideals in order to get anything done. Now Obama can use Bernie as an example of a guy who's very idealistic but can't get anything done, which was literally Hillary's critique of Bernie. And you can imagine, this is purely speculative, Obama saying, listen, you want to be the female Bernie Sanders? You want to spend 30, 40 years in Congress and accomplish nothing? Or do you want to actually get something done? If you want to get something done in Washington, you're going to have to compromise. And as long as you had a guy like Bernie who said, no, you don't have to compromise, she was able to stave off those voices. But when Bernie compromises a second time in a row, what is she supposed to do? No, I think what should have happened, and I'm really, I really sit and think a lot of these things through, because, here's an article, Crystal Ball rips report of Obama saying he would intervene to stop Sanders. That's great, Crystal. I'm glad that you did that. But Crystal Ball was not running in 2020 for president of the United States. Bernie Sanders was. Trump, I think it was in Florida. Trump went to Bush's backyard and said, your brother, because he was talking to Low Energy Jeb, he said, your brother lied us into a terrible war. We spent trillions of dollars and the whole thing was a lie. He said that in Bush's backyard. Here's the report, just in case you guys missed it. Crystal Ball rips report saying Obama would intervene to stop Sanders. Okay? My point is, Trump stood up in Florida, in Bush's backyard, and said, your brother got us into these forever wars, and it was wrong, it was a lie, it was very, very terrible. He did that in Bush's hometown. That's the reason Trump was able to get power, and that's the reason that he was so powerful that the left-wing establishment had to go 4 years of unalloyed, naked propaganda against Trump, and why they secretly were celebrating when COVID hit and destroyed our economy. Because if it wasn't for that, we'd still have Trump. Because Trump understood how many people he had behind him, and he held the party hostage. And he completely blew everything up. And Sanders was supposed to be the left-wing version of Trump. You had a left-wing peaceful populism that I'm to this moment still convinced if Bernie went up against Trump the first time, I believe Bernie would have won. And he was primed to win the second time. And then Obama did what he did. And instead of Bernie standing up for himself and saying, guys, look what's happening, and signaling to the party, I'm going to blow y'all up. I mean, hell, Bernie, he couldn't even think to himself like, well, I'm probably not going to make it. I'm probably never going to be the president. Like after North Carolina, Bernie, you should have said, okay, it's over. I'm never going to be the president. So let me just continue to blow up and agitate this party so that the next generation of progressive can actually have something to go by. You had a whole army of people. But what did Bernie do? He went and bent the knee to Biden, along with Tulsi and everybody else, along with Andrew Yang. We've got to do what's mathematically best to get Trump out of here. Because all of them fell for this stupid idea that Trump was a second incarnation of Lucifer and that it didn't matter who we hired to replace him. It didn't matter. Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler combined, Antichrist, doesn't matter. Trump is the worst thing possible. Okay, great. Now you've played completely into their hands, Bernie. Congratulations. And now AOC is on an island by herself. And now you've got progressives piling on her, blaming her for all of this as if she's the one that created this. No, what's happening is she's sending all these people money who are against Medicare for all because she's in the wilderness by herself. And that's the only way she knows to get a hearing. But even her peers still view her as far left. So they obviously know that she hasn't changed who she is. But I do think she's changing her strategy to be more centrist, at least in public, so that she can get a hearing because she actually wants to be able to pass legislation. Now, I believe AOC has the stones to stand up to the establishment. I believe that if AOC had behind her what Bernie had behind him for the last 8 years, that she would have done the right thing. But it is completely unfair to ask this girl, this woman, honestly. She's a woman, but she's a young woman, and she's going up against gatekeepers who are also women who do not care about the movement at all. I mean, Nancy Pelosi just got stung out for her, insider trading BS or whatever. She's corrupt to the core. All these people these are corrupt billionaires and trillionaires, y'all. And she's one person. Holy moly, what do you expect her to do? No, here's what needs to happen. This is one of the reasons why the Progressive Party, the more and more I think about it, force the vote. Jimmy Dore was right on force the vote. And it was wrong for AOC to handle force the vote and the fight for 15 the way that she did. But again, when you're by yourself and if you're convinced, listen, if AOC is convinced that the way to accomplish the most practical good, the way to accomplish getting out the most possible policies that are commensurate with what her ideals are, if she was convinced that the way to do that is to compromise with these people, then you cannot say that she's a sellout. You might disagree with that methodology, but come on, man. We're taking the most uncharitable assumption of this woman and completely leaving out the fact that she was left out to dry. She was hung out to dry. She was left out there to hang by herself. Bernie Sanders abandoned her. He abandoned the movement, and now she's a lone voice in the wilderness. I don't think, look, if I was a consultant for progressives, what I would have said after it became clear that Bernie bent the knee, if I was Jimmy Dore and TYT and all these people, they need to get together and they need to get in a room with AOC and say, okay, we're going to support you. The climate and the trajectory and the topography has changed. We had hella momentum, but we had a guy who didn't have it. So you're the next person, but you're by yourself now. You're going to have to build a coalition. You're going to have to navigate these very dangerous waters. I mean, to be honest with you, for the next 10 years, I really think that 2020 was it for progressives. I think Cenk was right. Cenk was consistently sounding the alarm and saying, hey, this is all or nothing for us. And now they're trying to say, well, it's not all or nothing, blah, blah. No, yeah, it was. What Bernie did in 2020, really 2016, but really what he did in 2020, he allowed himself to be propagandized by this machine. It's unbelievable to me. Unbelievable. Bernie Sanders got out there and said that Trump was the most dangerous president, yada, 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 yada. Hello? George Bush lied us into a war. Barack Hussein Obama droned more people than Bush and Cheney did. But Trump was the most dangerous president we've ever had. And he kept saying all that nonsense. So then when it was time to elect him, everybody overlooked all the cheating, all the Iowa stuff, all the craziness, all the naked out-and-out corporatism, what they did to Tulsi. Bernie didn't stand up for Tulsi. He didn't call any of these people out. He signaled to those people he's going to be a good soldier and march in line. He quit on the movement. And now the progressives should have had the foresight to everybody get together in the same room, Yang, Tulsi, everybody, and say, okay, AOC is next. Bernie's useless. AOC is next. But AOC is going to have to do some very intelligent political maneuvering, and we're going to have to go just like how the Democratic Party went hand in hand with the Democratic media, CNN, MSNBC. There was a complete convergence between them and the media. And people, you could say whatever you want. You can say it's as ugly as you want. But TYT and Jimmy Dore, if they would have got together and said, okay, we're going to do for the next 2 and 4 years, propaganda-wise, with AOC and progressivism, what the Democrats did to Trump with CNN and MSNBC. We're going to flood the airwaves so much with anti-establishment propaganda. We're going to have a unified front with AOC. And yeah, that means looking the other way when she does strategic things because she's trying to accomplish a goal. But what's happening with progressives right now is you got a bunch of emotional people who don't know how to think strategically and don't have much political sophistication. It's a lot of idealism and not a lot of strategic planning. And I'm sorry, there's a reason that powerful people remain powerful. And it's not only because they have the money, it's because they have strategic minds and they're relentless. And these people are willing to do and say anything. And they know how to manipulate people. They know how to use the news to propagandize and manipulate people. And I'm sorry, if you want to win, you got to do that. You got to do it. So now Jimmy Dore and the rest of them are out there attacking this person. Okay, in my opinion, she's the only hope the progressives have. And you can go ahead, if it makes you feel good to pile on this girl, go for it. Have at it. It's just ridiculous. What do you want her to do? I'm going to really be investigating the comment section here. I'd really like you guys to tell us, what do you want AOC to do? Good night. I mean, I don't know. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.